Hello, and welcome back to the channel. You're watching Journeys Through History. Welcome to Tampa, Florida, sunny, vibrant, and steeped in unexpected history. While today, the Tampa Bay area is a hub for tourism and commerce, over a century ago, this region, perched on Central Florida's western Gulf Coast, played a pivotal role in launching the United States onto the world stage. You might be visiting here for the great food, the Gulf breeze, white sand beaches, maybe a walk along Bayshore Boulevard, or the recently revitalized riverfront. But if you look closer, beneath the rooftops, sidewalks, and seawalls, are stories waiting to be discovered. Stories of immigrants, revolution, industry, and empire. In this episode, we invite you to walk with us through the streets of Ybor City, past the towers of a grand edifice that housed a luxury hotel, and out to the quiet corners of Tampa Bay, where America's Gilded Age stepped from continental shores to overseas invasion. In 1898, the Tampa Bay region became the staging ground for the Spanish-American War, a short conflict with long consequences. Our journey is rooted in the aromas of cigar factories, the voices of revolution, and the vision of industrialists when Tampa was transformed from a sleepy, sandy village into a gateway to empire. Join us on a journey to locations where history is hidden in plain sight. At the heart of our story is the Spanish-American War. This brief but pivotal conflict fought between the United States and Spain from April to August 1898 seems often overshadowed by America's longer and larger wars. But the Spanish-American War marked a key moment in American emergence onto the global stage. In the 1890s, Cuba was the epicenter of a growing liberation movement that sought independence from centuries of Spanish colonial rule. Since the mid-19th century, Cubans openly fought for independence from Spain, but failed to achieve much support from foreign nations. That changed in the 1890s when the Cuban struggle for independence drew the attention of powerful men in the United States who saw the overseas conflict as a potential for expansion. American newspapers, especially those of William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, sensationalized Spanish atrocities and fostered sympathy for the Cuban cause through yellow journalism. Economic interests also played a role. American investors had significant stakes in Cuban sugar and tobacco industries. The tipping point came on February 15, 1898. The explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor killed over 260 U.S. sailors. The event sent shockwaves through the American public. Sensationalist newspapers quickly blamed Spain, igniting outrage and a thirst for retribution. The rallying cry, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain," swept the nation, galvanizing public opinion and pushing the United States toward war. It became a powerful symbol of national pride, sacrifice, and the justification for intervention. Finally, in April 1898, the U.S. Congress declared war on Spain. Shortly thereafter, American forces sailed to Cuba and invaded the island. While the first battle and decisive American victory took place on May 1, 1898 at Manila Bay in the Philippines, and major combat took place in Puerto Rico and Guam, the Spanish-American War was primarily fought on the island of Cuba. Two of the most significant battles of the war took place near Santiago on July 1, 1898. Involved here were perhaps the best-known unit and military leader of the war, the Rough Riders, a volunteer cavalry led by future President Theodore Roosevelt. Here, they famously charged up Kettle Hill alongside regular Army units. Often overlooked but absolutely essential to the victory, were the regiments from the 9th and 10th Cavalry, known as the Buffalo Soldiers. These African-American units had previously distinguished themselves in the American West, and now, in Cuba, they fought with extraordinary courage under heavy fire and suffered some of the war's highest casualties. Their bravery helped secure American victory and earned them lasting, if far too often unrecognized, honor in U.S. military history. With quick and decisive victories over Spanish forces, the hostilities ended by August, only months after they began. Roughly 3,000 Americans died. Under 400 were killed in combat. The rest died from disease. The war formally concluded with the Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898. In the treaty, Spain ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States and relinquished all claims to Cuba. The United States became protectorate of Cuba. Although brief, the conflict signaled the emergence of the United States as a global power and marked a turning point in both American foreign policy and colonial history. In the wake of the Spanish-American War's brief but transformative campaign, the national spotlight shifted quickly to the spoils of victory and the rise of America as a global power. Yet the war's echoes remain grounded in the very landscape from which it launched. Few places reveal this better than Tampa Bay, whose role as a critical military staging ground has long been overshadowed by the flashier narratives of battlefield heroics and overseas conquest. Before the Rough Riders charged up San Juan Hill, they gathered on Florida's Gulf Coast, awaiting orders, supplies, and ships. Tampa Bay was not just a backdrop. It was a nerve center of logistics, diplomacy, and drama. Located northeast of downtown Tampa, today Ybor City is celebrated as one of Tampa's most vibrant and culturally rich neighborhoods. Known for its historic brick streets, iconic wrought iron balconies, and lively mix of restaurants, bars, and cigar shops. Once the heart of Tampa's immigrant labor movement and cigar industry, it now draws visitors for its nightlife, festivals, and architectural charm. While many come for entertainment, the deeper layers of Ybor's past, its role in Cuban independence, labor organizing, and the Spanish-American War, are still visible for those who know where to look. As the desire for independence from centuries of Spanish colonial rule grew in the 1890s, Tampa, and specifically the immigrant neighborhood of Ybor City, became a key center of support for the Cuban cause. Founded in 1885 by Cuban cigar manufacturer Vicente Martinez Ybor, the now historic Ybor City became home to thousands of Cuban, Spanish, Italian, and German immigrants. Originally seeking a more hospitable and economically favorable environment than Key West, Vicente Ybor purchased land northeast of Tampa and envisioned a company town centered around the cigar industry. With support from local investors and the newly arrived South Florida Railway, Ybor City quickly became a hub of industrial growth. Its first cigar factory opened in 1886, and by the early 1890s, the neighborhood was thriving with dozens of factories, thousands of workers, and a rapidly growing immigrant population. Today, as you wander the brick-lined streets of Ybor City, don't be surprised if you cross paths with some unexpected locals. Descended from the chickens kept by early Cuban and Spanish immigrants, untamed, defiant, and proud, these birds roam freely. Their crowing is more than a wake-up call. It's a living echo of Ybor's multicultural past. In Ybor City, even the roosters carry the spirit of revolution. Like the Cuban cigar workers who once gathered here to support their island's fight for independence, the roosters are a living symbol of resistance and resilience. They remind us that the fight for freedom leaves traces not just in monuments, but in the very life of a neighborhood. During the run-up to the Spanish-American War, Ybor City became a hotbed of political tension and revolutionary fervor. Many of its Cuban and Spanish immigrant residents were deeply involved in the Cuban independence movement, with cigar factory workers donating portions of their wages to the cause and attending fiery speeches by exiled leaders. The presence of Cuban revolutionary José Martí in Ybor City further ignited passions as he rallied support for the liberation of Cuba from Spanish rule. Martí played a pivotal role in Ybor City's history as a leader of the Cuban independence movement and a symbol of solidarity for the immigrant working class. His significance is marked with multiple statues and markers, most of which are found toward the western end of the historic district. Martí recognized the political importance of the tightly knit community and delivered impassioned speeches at mutual aid societies. His most famous appearance came in 1893, when he delivered a powerful calling for unity among Cubans of all races and social classes, and his visits helped transform the neighborhood into a strategic center for revolutionary organizing. The Friends of José Martí Park in Ybor City is technically Cuban soil. The small park sits on land once owned by Afro-Cuban immigrants Roberto and Paulina Pedroso, who sheltered José Martí during his revolutionary work in Tampa. The land was deeded to the Cuban government in 1956 with the approval of the U.S. State Department. That means this park, though surrounded by Florida streets and American landmarks, is officially Cuban soil. In fact, the site contains soil from each of the Cuban provinces. This makes it one of the only pieces of Cuban territory in the U.S. outside of an embassy. The site remains a lasting tribute to Martí's efforts and Tampa's deep ties to the Cuban independence movement. Welcome to the former Tampa Bay Hotel, now the iconic focal center of the University of Tampa. When the U.S. declared war on Spain in 1898, President McKinley needed a launching point for the invasion into Cuba. Tampa had the transportation system, it had the port, and it had the hotel. All thanks to a railroad tycoon with an eye for luxury and logistics. Henry B. Plant. Henry Plant had visited Florida in the mid-19th century, and soon he recognized the potential for his railroad and shipping business to expand. Plant's steamships and railroads moved passengers and cargo along the U.S. East Coast throughout the South and most of the Southeast United States. His railroads, steamship lines, and freight companies came to dominate the Gulf Coast of Florida. Plant was instrumental in creating Port Tampa's deep water docks that allowed for steamship passengers and freight to arrive in Tampa. From the port, Plant built a rail line providing easier access to Tampa and points beyond. The ultimate jewel in the Plant system crown was the Tampa Bay Hotel, a Moorish revival palace unlike anything else in the South. Completed in 1891, it wasn't just a hotel, it was a statement. The Tampa Bay Hotel was envisioned by Plant as a luxury resort designed to attract wealthy northeastern tourists to Florida's Gulf Coast. The building itself stretched a quarter-mile long, covering about 6 acres and containing over 500 rooms. Beyond its Moorish revival grandeur, the hotel's grounds included 150 acres of landscaped gardens, recreational facilities, and service buildings. Located on the western bank of the Hillsborough River, the hotel featured lavish furnishings, European artwork, electric lighting, telephones in every room, and modern indoor plumbing, unusual luxuries for the time. With its over 500 rooms, exotic architecture, and expansive gardens, the hotel quickly became a symbol of the Gilded Age's opulence and Florida's ambitions as a winter destination for America's elite. Today, guests can explore the Henry B. Plant Museum, housed within the former Tampa Bay Hotel, and walk the grounds of the former winter resort. This National Historic Landmark welcomes visitors into exquisitely restored rooms filled with original furnishings, artworks, and ornate decor imported from Europe and Asia. Henry Plant truly spared no expense in his attempt to create experiences for his guests. Outside the hotel's walls, the river, lush vegetation, and even a faux Spanish fort replete with Civil War-era cannon, still provide visitors with stunning visual experiences and a respite from the vibrant activity of downtown Tampa, located just across the river. In the months leading toward the declaration of war with Spain, Plant recognized the opportunity for his plant system and Tampa to serve his country's needs. With encouragement from Plant, Tampa, with its deep-water port and rail connections, was chosen as the primary embarkation point for troops heading to Cuba, and the hotel became the center of planning and staging for the U.S. Army's Fifth Corps. General William Rufus Shafter established his command headquarters in the hotel, and its leisurely verandas and ballrooms filled with military staff, war correspondents, and foreign observers. Indeed, the weeks between the declaration of war and when the Army received invasion orders was deemed the rocking chair period of the war. One of the generals staying at the hotel noted, "Only God knows why Plant built a hotel here, but thank God he did." Among the better-known hotel guests was Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, whose Rough Riders camped at various locations around the Tampa Bay area. In addition, journalists covering the war stayed at the Tampa Bay Hotel, including artist Frederick Remington, who covered the war for Harper's Weekly. The hotel's transformation during the Spanish-American War marked a pivotal moment in both Tampa's and the hotel's history. What had been a symbol of luxury and leisure became a place of national significance, tying the local community to the unfolding events of the American imperial expansion. Though most of the soldiers never stayed in the hotel itself, the presence of high-ranking officers, politicians, and journalists turned the site into a strategic nerve center. The Tampa Bay Hotel remained a working hotel until 1932, but its brief role in the war left a lasting legacy. Today, it is preserved as part of the University of Tampa, with the Henry B. Plant Museum interpreting its important wartime and cultural past. Next, we're on to Port Tampa. Today, if you ask for Port Tampa, the response is more than likely to point you in the direction of Port Tampa Bay, home to the modern cruise terminal, tourist destinations, and channel-side residential and business district. The area is located approximately a mile and a half from the Tampa Bay Hotel on the eastern side of downtown Tampa, and well worth the visit. But for our journey, we need to head south and west, following the rail line extension created by Henry Plant. From the hotel, we'll follow the route of the soldiers down to Port Tampa, the end of the rail line. Located about 10 miles from downtown on the southwestern edge of the Tampa Peninsula, today Port Tampa consists of residential areas, parks, and industrial ports. Port Tampa was established in the 1880s as a strategic deep-water port by Henry Plant. Plant extended his railroad lines from central Florida to this newly developed port, circumventing the then shallow waters of Tampa Bay that limited access for large ships. By connecting Port Tampa with the rest of his transportation empire, including his luxurious Tampa Bay hotel, Plant transformed the once remote area into a vital commercial and military hub. The port quickly became instrumental for shipping Florida citrus and phosphate, as well as receiving mail and passengers via steamship from Cuba and Key West. As tensions between the United States and Spain escalated in the 1890s, Port Tampa assumed growing military importance. When the Spanish-American War broke out, and with the encouragement from Henry Plant, the U.S. Army chose Port Tampa as its principal point of embarkation for troops and supplies bound for Cuba. The presence of Plant's rail and steamship infrastructure made the port ideally suited to handle the rapid mobilization of the Army's Fifth Corps. In the spring and summer of 1898, over 30,000 troops passed through Port Tampa, including the Rough Riders and Buffalo Soldiers. The area buzzed with military activity, and ships loaded with men, horses, weapons, and munitions crowded the port's wharves. Troops camped in open fields, trained in the heat, and waited for their orders. During the wartime buildup, Port Tampa became a place of national attention and local upheaval. Journalists, Red Cross nurses, politicians, and military personnel flooded into the area. The port's hotels and makeshift encampments swelled with people, and the logistical challenge of feeding, housing, and managing thousands of troops became clear. Racial tensions also flared as soldiers from segregated regiments faced hostility in the surrounding communities, even as they prepared to fight overseas. We'll explore that in another video. Despite these problems, Port Tampa played a crucial role in the war effort, serving as the last point of American soil many American soldiers touched before embarking on their journey to Cuba and into the pages of history. Today it's a tranquil seashore park, ideal for kayaking, beachcombing, and history walks. But if you listen closely among the palms and seabirds, you might still hear the echoes of America on the brink of becoming an empire. Just across Tampa Bay, in Pinellas County, is Fort DeSoto State Park. In the 1890s, at Fort DeSoto, the U.S. Army was preparing to defend the coastline. Built as part of a coastal defense system, Fort DeSoto never saw a battle, but its batteries and the foundations of its barracks remain. Located on Mullet Key at the entrance to Tampa Bay, Fort DeSoto played a strategic but largely symbolic role during the Spanish-American War. In the 19th century, Mullet Key was selected as a suitable location for coastal defense because of its proximity to the shipping channels leading into Port Tampa and Tampa Bay. The U.S. Army established a military presence on the key, constructing temporary camps and artillery batteries to guard against any potential Spanish naval threat. Though Fort DeSoto itself was not yet fully operational during the war, the military occupation of Mullet Key was part of a broader effort to secure the Gulf Coast and project American power in the Caribbean. The construction of Fort DeSoto as a permanent coastal defense installation began in earnest shortly after the war ended. In 1899, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers began building the concrete gun emplacements, barracks, and support structures that would define the fort's layout. The fort was part of the Endicott program, a nationwide initiative to modernize America's coastal defenses in response to new technologies and global rivalries. Fort Soto was designed to protect Tampa Bay from foreign invasion. However, the anticipated threat of Spanish return or any serious foreign naval action never materialized, and Fort Soto's guns were never fired in combat. In the years following the Spanish-American War, Fort Soto served primarily as a garrison post and training facility, with a modest contingent of soldiers stationed there through the early 20th century. By 1910, the importance of the fort had already begun to decline, due in part to shifting military strategies and the development of more advanced naval weaponry. The fort was officially decommissioned in 1923, and the property changed hands several times before being acquired by Pinellas County in the mid-20th century. Today, Fort Soto preserves the remnants of the military installation, offering visitors a glimpse into the site's layered history. The preserved batteries and museum interpret the fort's brief but notable role in America's emergence as a global power during the Spanish-American War. Fort Soto Park is not only a site of historical significance, but also a vital ecological preserve, encompassing over 1,100 acres of interconnected islands, mangroves, wetlands, and coastal habitats. The park is home to a diverse array of plant and animal species, including threatened and endangered wildlife. Its beaches, consistently ranked among the best in the United States, provide crucial nesting grounds for shorebirds and sea turtles, while its mangrove-lined waterways support healthy fisheries and protect against coastal erosion. The park's natural features serve as both a sanctuary for biodiversity and a living laboratory for conservation, drawing birdwatchers, kayakers, and eco-tourists who come to experience its rich and varied ecosystems. Fort Soto Park stands as a model for balancing public access with environmental stewardship. Tampa's role in the Spanish-American War was brief but transformative. It linked the city forever to a global turning point where questions of freedom, empire, and identity shaped nations. For history travelers and curious minds alike, the Tampa Bay area offers a journey to places where the landscapes of history tell stories of revolution, resilience, and the beginnings of American empire.